Very good. Thank you very much. Welcome to the Languages Pedagogy podcast. Today, I have another wonderful guest. I'm so excited about today because this is something that I was actually thinking about and I didn't know actually how to do it or who can actually help me out with this information, with this topic that we're going to be talking today. So, I finally found the right person. I'm so happy to have on this episode. Let me say if I said correctly. Faye Casell.
Correct.
Oh, I got it. Point. So welcome to the Languages Pedagogy podcast, to this corner, little corner where I share good news, positivity in regards of languages, education, and pedagogy. So welcome. Please let the
Thank you.
audience know who you are, your name, what you do.
Sure. Yes. So my name is Faye Casell. I'm what's called a certified academic language therapist. I'm a licensed dyslexia therapist. I am currently working through my social media, my website, online at homereadingcoach.com. And I've been a public school teacher, special educator for 20 something years. And when my son was born, he had a lot of developmental delays. And I knew that we were going to be on the lookout for dyslexia or some sort of language based
Mm-hmm.
learning disability or something that was going to impact reading just because his speech had been so impaired and there had been so many motor issues. And sure enough, he did need help. And I was able to kind of utilize a lot of my special education strategies to give him a boost. But what I wound up doing was getting enrolled in a dyslexia therapy program. And so I have been working with kids with dyslexia and language based disabilities for several years, both in public school and private school.
Mm-hmm.
But now what I'm doing is I am working directly with parents who want to, for whatever reason, economic access, provide the intervention at home themselves. So I am teaching them
Wow.
how to teach dyslexic kids to read. Because I would imagine maybe you've discussed this on your podcast, but there is a literacy crisis in the United States, but also globally.
Definitely.
And the kids with dyslexia have been the hardest hit and the most left out. They're not getting served.
Yeah, and it is like that. It's not only in the United States, it's globally. I've actually
Yes.
had the privilege to travel the world and see it myself firsthand, the problems that we actually have with dyslexia and how it's poorly treated. It's not actually treated like in the way it has to be. It,
Right.
they're not given the right attention, I would say. That's what actually comes to my mind. I mean, they just see it just like a normal stuff, or they just don't care, I
It's
think.
so probably about 1 in 5 people have dyslexia. In the United States, of that 20%, probably only 20% of those are actually getting services and identified through their school. I think the problem is so layered. The United States and definitely much of the English speaking world has not been teaching reading in a way that's aligned with the science of reading and brain science. We've in fact gone completely against it for several
Hmm.
decades. And so now not even touching kids with dyslexia, by the time kids are sort of in fourth, fifth grade here, over half of them are not reading proficiently. And so just our most foundational layer
Yeah.
of classroom wide, grade wide instruction has not been sound. And so the the identification of children who have significantly impacted reading struggles have just been swept under the rug, or
Well,
kind of waiting until it's terrible enough to finally give it some
exactly.
services. And you know what brain science says is that if you intervene when a child is about 6 years old, you can get them to proficiency and then to maintain it for the lifespan with about a 90% success rate, 90 to
Well,
95. Whereas if you wait a couple of years, which is what happens in the United States,
yeah.
it can take 4 times as long, and the success rate drops to half, to about 45%. So
Hmm.
it's really hurting a lot of kids.
Definitely. I mean, that statistics actually scares a lot. It's like a
It,
horror movie.
it's terrifying. It's
Yeah.
terrifying, and I don't really understand why it's become acceptable to, or it's always been acceptable to say, oh, well, I don't know how to
Yeah.
teach kids with dyslexia. Because
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is that only 30% maybe of the population are going to just pick up reading without it wouldn't matter what you threw at them. They will catch on. But
True.
everybody else needs a more systemized approach. And so what the way that I teach dyslexic kids to read is fine and applicable for everybody, but for some it's truly essential. And so
Hmm.
it doesn't really make sense that we don't just start there, and try to hit everybody across the board. It's become this specialized thing where it's been maintained as a specialized thing. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, is because these families in the United States and in the English speaking world, and I'm sure all over, um, their kids aren't being qualified for services. They're having to go privately, and they can't afford it, or they have to make decisions about emptying their savings or their retirement,
Exactly.
so that they can get their kid taught. So
That's
it's
actually
becoming
sounds really
too
sad
burden.
actually, and it's pretty bad actually that it's treated like if it's common. It's just something simple, It's not something like very important. It's not like that, And while I was actually preparing a couple of questions actually to discuss with you, I was checking on some of the statistics, and you're actually bringing now some of the statistics that happens in the United States, but there are some countries in Southeast Asia, in Asia in general,
Mhm.
and one of the biggest problems that I found out there is that most of the teachers are not qualified even to teach. So
Yeah.
is it something like that, what it's happening in the States? Is it something that like empowerment? I mean, teachers, they don't want to do it. Why? Because they say, oh no, no, send them somewhere else. I mean, they need a specialized teachers or something like it. But do you think is it something
Yeah.
like that?
So teacher preparation has been a big issue. There are still colleges of education that are teaching incorrect sort of reading strategies, what we call
The
a
typical
three
ones.
cueing system, and it doesn't work. And they've been debunked. Then there's a lot of the states are over here are legislating where the teachers who've been trained, who are in the classroom, have to go back and do some professional development in the science of reading. But when you've already got practices ingrained in these teachers, it's very
Mhm.
hard to encourage implementation and carry over to the classroom. You've got a lot of states, and about 70% of school districts in the United States, that are still buying curriculum that are not aligned with the science of reading. So the
Wow.
materials that are given to the teacher, the training that's given to the teacher, the materials that's given to the teacher are not appropriate. And then we're our biggest, we do have, there's always a lot of um, sort of gaps
Hmm.
in hiring that is really prominent in the charter schools in the United States. They're allowed to hire high numbers often of teachers that are not certified, that maybe just have a college degree in education or something else.
Huge.
Um,
Oh,
so there, there's just such a knowledge gap there too. So it really is. There's so many layers.
yeah,
Um,
just to name a few. I mean, but this is very powerful actually. I think this is another one, and this is one of the main ones I would say. I don't want to actually put the blame on teachers or something like that because all of us actually are
mm,
trying to make a living and all want to try to make the best, you know. But I think we gotta put a little bit more effort in learning, in trying to prepare ourselves a little bit more. You know, life is changing, and we gotta actually change with them. So we gotta actually
yes,
keep evolving and learning because everything
yes.
changes. You know, back in the days, we never. I mean, I gotta actually just mention something that one of the other teachers, Andrea Bittner, who was here in a podcast show as well, she said a couple of a decade ago or 2 decades ago, we were not talking about multilingualism, but now
Mm,
it's a common topic. And same thing happens over here with the reading literacy. It's also part of it, and everything is changing, is evolving, and we got to actually
yes.
get to it. And that's the other
Ye-
part. And teachers need to actually work a little bit more. I know there are more things behind, and it's easy to say it's like a love story, but no, I mean there are more struggle behind and all that.
Right. Well, I mean, teachers are the first line of defense, right?
Hmm.
And a lot of classroom teachers they don't necessarily always know what to look for,
Hmm.
what the signs are, and
Yes.
then what the response needs to be. Sometimes the teachers do know what they're looking for, and they're the ones who push the hardest and get the kids services. But even if we can just get to that point where the classroom teachers and all the people who have contact with the kids really know what they're looking for,
Hmm.
um, that would be a huge help. There's a lot of old ideas still lingering where, when people say dyslexia, that's when kids see letters backwards, right? That is a decades old idea that it was a
Yeah.
vision issue. And really, it's a processing issue. To your point about things changing, I read this book, Language at the Speed of Sight, and it was written by a college professor who was working right sort of in the brain sciences in the learning lab. And directly across the green was the College of Education.
Well.
And he said, we're in here scanning people's brains as they're reading, and we know what the brain is doing. And the College of Education is across the way teaching things that run completely against what we're doing here. And there is this huge disconnect in bringing the information together. Teachers really need that information, and it's just shocking that there's this, within one
Hmm.
institution, the information isn't transmitting and translating into practice that can be utilized.
Yeah, and that actually hits a lot because it's like I don't know what the education department or the education bureau, whatever it is, they're just actually working under a curriculum, but they're forgetting completely about the neuroscience behind it. It's like they're just
Mm-hmm.
watching one side, but not the other one. I mean, and we gotta actually put them together. It's like it doesn't work actually just individual.
No, it really has to be an integrated kind of looking at the child holistically.
Exactly.
No child's going to learn unless they feel safe and cared for. You have to care about their feelings and their thoughts as much as you care about their ability
Mm,
to, solve an equation.
yeah.
Some schools and some leaders and some districts, have that as a priority. But it's really challenging. And then the other thing is that in Louisiana really pushed kind of a knowledge building curriculum, and they've had some interesting
Mm,
outcomes because one of the things that's happened in reading education is that we're trying to teach discrete skills like with reading comprehension. Here's the author's purpose. Let's find the main idea. Let's
oh,
do this. And really we want to be going deeply into understanding the content areas and weaving the comprehension strategies throughout that, and being explicit, but they're not standalone. We don't just say today we're going to practice finding the main idea or something. So,
definitely.
yeah, yeah,
That's another one. Oh, Jesus. So many things actually to talk about that. Oh my goodness. I feel like
yes.
we're not gonna end here. So literacy crisis, or we're talking about that, and that's the main topic today. So why do so many children reach first grade already behind in reading?
So, there are a lot of things that can happen before kids get to school in first grade. If a child has any kind of language or speech delay, they're
Hmm.
immediately at risk. And I mentioned before that about 1 in 5 kids have, or anyone of the
Yeah,
population has dyslexia. But if you have a sibling, a parent, that number jumps
yeah, yeah.
substantially. Um, so then we have, not all kids have access to high quality early childhood education. So when they come to school in kindergarten, hopefully they know most of the alphabet or many
Hmm.
letters of the alphabet, upper and lower. They're starting to hear the sounds. But the most those foundational things like doing nursery rhymes and songs and really focusing on oral language, um, is the foundation where reading skills come in. And certainly with more and more kids um, utilizing electronics and different things sooner that just sort of take away the human interaction,
Yeah.
language skills can decline, and that directly impacts reading skills.
You know,
So,
this is the point. And let me shock you a little bit. I work in a kindergarten as well, and I
mhm.
actually there I love it. I'm actually look like a little bit of a monster, but when I'm with the kids, I'm like a little monster there. So I remember one of I mean, it was last year. The principal, she just actually just came to me and she was like, "Mike, please, we're not gonna be teaching reading anymore." Why is that? Oh no, we don't need it. We only need speaking. That's it. Doesn't matter if
Mm,
they
mm,
read or not.
mhm.
Don't you think is a reality that can also affect kids later?
The not starting it in kindergarten?
Yeah,
Is that what you're asking?
yeah.
Um, you know, I would say that the first grade year is a really good open window. There are countries, and you would know this, that delay the start of reading. However, they have very phonetic, very reliable language structures. You're talking about Chinese for
Yes.
you, where you're
Chinese
teaching right
students,
now?
yeah.
And
Chinese
I don't
students
know enough about
and Russian
Chinese.
students.
Okay. But certainly with English, you don't want to wait. English is a language that has it has a lot of really strong, mostly phonetic components when you learn the
Yeah.
code. However, we have brought in so many words from the Norman invasion, from the Greeks,
Mhm.
influence on the sciences, the Anglo Saxons, that it's it's a complex language, and I don't mean to say that other languages aren't complex, because they certainly are, but some languages are very reliably phonetic.
Yeah.
Every time you see this letter, you say this sound. When you see the letter A in English, it can have any of 5 sounds. So you do need to start sooner, I think.
So then, for you, then in this case, as being the expert here in reading, you're the reading coach here. What's the perfect age for kids to start like getting immersed into the reading world, literacy, and all this?
I mean, birth, from in the sense that you want to always be talking to kids, always telling stories, reading stories, playing with words, playing with sounds. Um, there was a study even a few decades ago, I want to say, in the United Kingdom, where um, professionals started to see a decline in speech skills of young children. And they realized that it coincided with the design of the stroller. The pram or the stroller used to face the adult. And so there was a lot of back and forth conversation, cooing. And once the child turned away,
Hmm.
the language skills started to drop. So that's the foundational piece. Certainly, by the time that you're 3 and 4, really want to be pushing all of those um, kind of wordplay, sound, rhyme sort of things. And usually, the first letters in letter sound correspondence that kids learn are the letters of their name or their family, sibling, things that are going to be really important to them, that are really valuable for them to know. So, those are some really nice things too, as you're looking for signs that, that's the M for mommy and that sort of
Hmm.
stuff, recognizing it in um, different kinds of print, that sort of thing. You want to be exposing them to that as they're
Of
going
course.
into kindergarten.
Got it.
um, yeah.
So,
And then it's 6 years old, 5.5, 6 years old, they'll be getting a more explicit,
mm,
this is this letter, this is the sound instruction. And it really just has to be sequential and build upon previous learning.
exactly. Totally agree with that. Now, but now addressing a little bit to parents, because you said that actually from birth, okay, so parents have to do the first job at home. So parents need
Oh,
to give
sure.
the first instruction. And this is again, we were talking a little bit at the beginning about the responsibility of teachers to get the proper training and
Mm-hmm.
get more serious in that sense, let's put them in that context. But
Yeah.
also, parents, they need to know a little bit. But let's be honest. I mean, not all the parents are patient enough to check or to evaluate. And here in this podcast, I have also parents, and they were actually the ones who told me, I would like to know about this. How can I know that? I don't know. Nobody teaches me this. I mean, but right now in the era of
Mm,
information, we got everything there, in the palm of our
yeah.
hands. But
We do. We do.
what are the early warning signs that parents and
Sure.
teachers usually ignore?
So early signs that you definitely want to look out for that are not, let's wait and see, is first of all, if a parent or a sibling has a history of reading struggles, you want to be laser focused
Hmm.
on that. Um, if kids can't hear rhymes, produce rhymes, identify rhymes, that's a good warning
That's a huge
sign.
one.
Kids who have trouble even distinguishing their left from their right, or understanding the order of the days in the week. So we always go to the park on Mondays, and as we're leaving the park, my son asks me, "What day is it?" So just kind of keeping track of those sorts of things. Excuse me. Uh, some other things would be showing any kind of resistance to being around print, not being able to orient a book. As kids start getting reading instruction, things that you would look out for is in a picture book, right? If there is an image and then the text, and let's say the text says something about the cat is in the window and the child says kitty is doing this, so they're using the pictures to guess. The flip side of that might be that they read the word wrong, but they're guessing based off the first letter. So instead of the word home, for example, they say house. So looking for those clues of where they might be guessing is a very good indicator as well. And I've got a lot of information on my website, homereadingcoach.com, and on my YouTube, Teach My Child to Read. And there's so much out there. In fact, one of the things for English speaking families that I have that I can share is, which they can get on my website, is something I wrote, just sort of a mini ebook called the Parents Roadmap, or the Dyslexia Roadmap for Families. And it goes through a lot of those early warning signs once they've started learning, things to look for. There's in English, many kids have letter confusion. That is a typical development, but they often outgrow it around 6, 7 years old. So if your child is 7 and still getting their B's and D's and P's and Q's and J's confused, that's a big sign as well. So there are so many, and it really, we now know that you can reliably identify dyslexia with about 92% accuracy at age 5.5. So that can even be before a lot of formal reading instruction, because a lot of it has to do with hearing the sounds in words. It starts on an oral language level. Another big sign that you'll see here is where the recall and the pulling back of an everyday word is a little bit challenging, that word retrieval, and perhaps the word is phonetically similar or in a similar category, but not quite right. So, for example, talking about the washing machine, but accidentally saying refrigerator, dishwasher, you're still in that category of appliance, but you don't have it right. I worked with an assistant teacher who was dyslexic, and it was very common for her to be off by kind of a sound in a word. She meant to say whole, but she said whale, or, when she was reading, or meant to say, admission, but she was saying tuition. So there are some common phonetic elements.